But onto a slightly different health debate, and one now from overseas, because a law banning most abortions has come into effect in the US state of Texas. The law represents the most dramatic restriction on abortion rights in America since the High Court's landmark Roe versus Wade decision legalised abortion across the country in 1973.
So the Supreme Court is yet to act on an emergency appeal to put the Texas law out, which would prohibit abortions once a fetal heartbeat can be detected, usually around 6 weeks, on hold.
In a statement issued after the law took effect, US President Joe Biden said it blatantly violated the constitutional right established under Roe versus Wade. Abortion providers are asking the Supreme Court to step in, and they said the law would rule out 85% of abortions in Texas and force many clinics to close. Now, I found this really, really troubling. I mean, you know, for me, I'm very kind of pro-choice. I think it's a woman and a partner's sort of right to choose what happens. You know, people fall pregnant unexpectedly without necessarily thinking through those further impacts. And for me, the thing that's most baffling about this is that 6 weeks, roughly 6 weeks, a lot of women wouldn't actually know that they were pregnant. They wouldn't have really had that thought. They wouldn't have had the time to really process the information and to make a decision about what they wanted to do. I think that's the thing that for me was the most worrying. But seeing the rights rode back to such an extent as well. I mean, Arlene, I think we're at slightly different positions on the abortion debate here, but
yeah,
what do you
we are, and I think that's a good thing about the political correction, that we can have this discussion and this debate coming from completely different points of view, because I'm very much pro-life. I believe that both lives matter. I believe that there should be a system put in place to actually, and this is something that we don't talk about a lot, a system put in place to support the mothers who find themselves in crisis pregnancy. So instead of talking about the end result, which is abortion, actually talk about how we can help those women before we get to that stage of abortion. So I think the thing that struck me about the Texas law, though, Deanna, was the fact that it's not your normal abortion law. It's actually saying that if someone helps a woman to get an abortion, then an individual can sue that person. So if a taxi driver brings you to a clinic, then that taxi driver can be sued by someone who doesn't have any, what we call in the law, locus standi, doesn't have any standing, in other words, aren't related to the person having the abortion, but anybody in the public can sue that taxi driver or sue the clinic. So I find that to be very strange, and I'm not quite sure how that's going to work in law, but I think people have put that in to try and get around the Roe v. Wade decision, and I think that's the interesting point. I think, obviously, we come from completely different points of view on abortion, but I think from a legal point of view, that's a very interesting development.
Yeah, well, I think, you know, you said you think it's strange. I think it's actually incredibly sinister. There was an article, I think, in the Telegraph today with an interview with an Uber driver who said he is going to avoid, like the plague, taking any woman to an abortion clinic because he is fearful of, effectively, what he referred to as bounty hunters, people going there to try and catch someone either having an abortion or aiding an abortion so that they can claim their $10,000 and their
legal
fees. Which I find
incredible as well. I mean, we're talking about life and death, and I recognise that you take a different view in terms of abortions, but this does seem to be a very aggressive piece of legislation, and not going against the Texas state, the Attorney General, but actually going against taxi drivers and clinics.
Absolutely, and the fact that individuals can sue, even if they're not related, even if they haven't been personally harmed by, you know, the actions of either the woman or the taxi driver or whatever. You know, a random man off the street could see a woman going into an abortion clinic and sue. And I think it's incredibly sinister. Paul, if you've been following this, I mean, what do you make of this really interesting kind of rollback in abortion rights in Texas?
Well, let me try and take the middle path between the two of you. I mean, the point about the taxi driver, I agree. I find that completely perverse. But I mean, on the broader subjects, I find that these debates can often generate more heat than light, and that's the unfortunate thing about it. Often, I mean, I have enormous sympathy with any woman who finds herself, you know, pregnant and it's an unwanted pregnancy, and we of course have to make sure they have the necessary support structures in place to help them. But equally, I understand and sympathise with people who think, look, abortion isn't simply just a medical procedure as some people present it. It is the termination of a life, and I can understand when people see the incredible advanced technology that we see nowadays, pictures of babies in the womb moving around, and come to the view, look, that is a tiny human being. I can't see that as anything but a tiny human being. I can see why people form that view. But, I simply, and I'm conscious, obviously, I'm a man in this debate, although I don't take the view that being a man somehow invalidates me or other men from having an opinion. But I do think often the debate takes place in an atmosphere of accusation and recrimination, and trying to cut through that, I think, is important as we're trying to do this morning, obviously.
Absolutely, and as Arlene said, I think that is the great thing about our show, that we can have such opposing views on this and yet sit here and kind of debate them live.
Well, I think the point that I would make to women right across the UK is abortion's not the only choice. Sometimes it's presented as, if you're in a crisis pregnancy, haven't realised, oh goodness, what am I going to do, that abortion is the answer. I mean, there are other answers to the question, and I think sometimes we don't have those discussions, and I wish we had a better discussion about it. And I absolutely believe that there's more that needs to be invested in perinatal care. There definitely needs to be. We need to give more support to women who find themselves in that sort of a situation, instead of just having this very black and white, as Paul says, debate about abortion or no abortion.
And I think going back a step as well, Arlene, easier access to contraception as well, and different types of contraception, because some work for some women and not for others, and some people have horrific, side effects from things like the pill, but making sure that women can access that contraception really easily to avoid unexpectedly or unwantedly falling pregnant in the first place, I think is really incredibly important.